You've been asking the hard questions that finally have Donald Trump where he is, which is, vaccine schmaxine, no matter what, we're back. How did he arrive at that point at his own vaccine event?
The president arrived at that point because he's just really, frankly, gotten tired of this idea that states are closed and that people are having to hunker down. He's really just lost his patience with the idea that he has to continue to listen to the scientists, which say that states are not fully ready to be open and that more testing is needing. Now, testing is really a bipartisan issue. We saw earlier this week Republican senators and Democratic senators say alike, testing is what we need if we're going to really reopen. But the president today shifted back and doing something that we didn't see him do for a while, which is starting to compare the virus again to the flu, which, of course, experts say it's not. But I think that moment that you played is the moment from this today, and really it's the moment from the week, which is the president said, we're back. Vaccine, no vaccine, treatment, no treatment. I want our economy going back to the way it was. So what you see is a president who's leaning on his political instincts instead of the advice of scientists.
John Heilman, I'm coming to you because I don't want to drag Dr. Hotez into the president's political instincts conversation, but I think Yamiche brought us to the right place with that observation. He won because enough of his primal instincts tapped into enough people in enough states to deliver him an electoral victory, but it was largely about throwing out the establishment. Right now, you've got 69% of all Americans not willing to send their kids to school. You've got upwards of 70 and 80% of Americans not ready to go to restaurants, bars, gyms. So to open the economy without bringing along the people, without instilling in them any confidence that you can open safely, seems to be where Donald Trump dealt himself out of the reopening conversation.
Right. Can I say something first, Nicole?
Please.
Hi, nice to see you.
Hi.
I mean, not see you, but you know what I mean? Like, it's awesome to be with you. I love having Fridays with you, and I miss you so much.
I miss you so much.
I can't stand it that we're not together for all these weeks.
It's a terrible
substitute. Can I just say at the start that the man is an idiot? Can I just say at the start, like listening to that sound, he's just an idiot. He's just a moron. Like the idea that the president of the United States stands up and says, the problem with testing is that if we test, we have more cases. That's what he said. If we test, we have more cases. You know what? The testing doesn't make the cases. The testing reveals the cases. The number of cases out there is the number of cases out there. The testing helps us know how many there are. He literally believes that the problem with testing is that it somehow gives us more cases, and that's bad. It's bad for his politics. So the sheer idiocy of those comments is...
Let's go there. Let's not move on because, I get a mammogram every year. But if I had a bad mammogram, I wouldn't blame the mammogram. I would blame, whatever it showed up. I mean, anyone that takes a parent to the doctor to have any sort of test or a kid knows that it's not the doctor's office that makes your loved one sick. It's the doctor's office that tells you about the sickness and helps you treat it. I mean, John Heilman, you have just put your nail probably on the head of the largest problem people that work for Donald Trump are dealing with. He doesn't understand the health crisis.
Stand it. Right. And to the extent that he understands it, Nicole, I think what really it is that he's saying, I think he might understand that the tests don't indicate, it's not that the tests equal the problem, but that the problem is that this is all about PR for him. So if there is a test, the test is the thing that can give you, can read that there's a case. And if there's a case, we have to count that case. And if we have to count that case, it creates a bad number. And if it creates a bad number, that creates bad politics for him. So I think what he's really saying is he'd rather not have so much testing, because if we didn't have so much testing, we would still have just as much virus, but we wouldn't know about it. And if we didn't know about it, it wouldn't be such a headache for him in terms of the PR and in terms of the politics, which brings us back to your point, which, the man was in 2016, in some cases, kind of a feral genius for taking all of his inadequacies and all the problems he had and all the ways in which he wasn't qualified to be president, all the ways he wasn't fit, and still managing to pull that inside straight and win just enough votes in just enough places, as you said. But he's so far right now on the wrong side of this issue. You look at the numbers of this week. It's not just that he's getting drubbed on, do you trust him on what he's saying about the virus, and it's not just that he's getting drubbed on his handling on the crisis overall. It's that you dig into those crosstabs and you see what's happening for him with his base. You see what's happening with him with men, with white non-college, with seniors. The core of the Trump coalition, if you look at the exit polls in 2016 and where they are right now, he's bleeding out in all of those areas. And I'm not trying to say that I don't think it's recoverable or that Trump can't win. I will never say that ever again. Trump can win. He can recover. But right now, what you see is a man who knows, when you see him on this Obamagate spree all week, that is a guy who's focused on feeding the base. And a president who's focused on feeding the base in the spring of a re-election year is a president who knows he's in deep, deep doo-doo.
I could not agree with you more. I also think, Dr. Hotez, to bring this back to the science and to bring this back to what is driving the president into the corner that he finds himself in, and I agree with all the motivations behind the hand-waving, but I do think that he is up against something that he can't spin his way out of. People can handle the bad news about where we are. And I think people are even willing to entertain the possibility that we're going to have to find safe ways to go back to some of the things we used to do. But I think most people, before they drop their child off at school, wants to know that everyone will be tested, certainly anybody with a fever or who goes to the school nurse not feeling well. And I think most people want to know that their workplaces have testing. So what Trump wants, what Trump needs, is the thing that he's holding up, which is adequate testing. Can you talk about the pieces that are needed to get us as a country through these next hurdles, these next steps safely?
Yeah, I mean, what he wants to do, Nicole, is I understand he wants to start implementing the economic recovery plan, and he's bringing together business leaders and making sound approaches towards that goal. And he's enlisted a lot of the governors, and they're bringing in, important people in the business community in each of those states. The problem is the steps have not been adequately taken to ensure that economic recovery will actually be sustained. What I mean by that is if you simply open up the economy right now, all of the models pretty much show that there will be a sharp increase and uptick in the number of COVID-19 cases as we move into the summer and fall months. And that potentially could derail any attempts at economic recovery, so that there's not been this effort to put in place a public health system that's commensurate to sustain the economy. And that all has to do with, again, testing in the workplace, ramping up the contact tracing at a level we've never seen before, having sophisticated app systems, but still simple to use for syndromic surveillance, communication plan models for each of those cities. And now the CDC is starting to be unfettered a bit to get some of those plans in place. But until then, we've had to rely on private universities for doing this in Georgetown and Harvard and Columbia. So we're still not there yet. And so it's not just the testing, it's creating that whole ecosystem that needs to be implemented to sustain the economy. And so I'm very worried that things will become very unstable as we head into the weeks and months before the election. Cases go up. There's an attempt to deflect and blame others, and maybe even the scientists. It could be a very unstable time in America.
The relationship between the president and Tony Fauci seems more unstable than at other points, and you've spoken in very personal terms about your respect for him. I wonder what you make of the fact that after his testimony, which he did from home, because he's self-isolating right now because one of Donald Trump and Mike Pence's close aides, the vice president's press secretary, has tested positive for COVID. So Dr. Fauci is on the job, I'm sure, 24/7, but doing so from home. He testified that the decisions about schools, we would have to learn more, and we shouldn't rush to make those decisions without understanding the potential dangerous effects on kids of COVID. That invited a rebuke from Donald Trump, of course, in front of the cameras. But I wonder what you make of the fact that Tony Fauci seems to be backed by the Lancet, by every scientist that speaks out in terms of the science and public health that is needed to beat this virus.
Yeah, Tony, Dr. Fauci's in a tight spot. He's got to stay true to the science, and I think he is. But there's a lot of other considerations that are out there, and a lot of them are not under his control. Look, we saw this with the White House announcement today about the vaccine, and there's been two very competent scientists that have been put in charge of this new initiative. Moncef Slaoui, who's a vaccine scientist out of GlaxoSmithKline. I've known him for years. He's been in my lab. First-rate vaccine scientist, Peter Marks, coming out of CBER, the branch of FDA that deals with vaccines. But again, you're going to get this crunch that there's going to be a lot of pressure to get the vaccine out there before the election or right around the time of the election. And the truth is, I don't see a path by which you can collect enough safety data and enough data that these vaccines actually work by then. So I envision there could be some tensions yet again, because the phase 3 clinical trials for both efficacy and safety probably won't even begin until the summer. Could take easily a year. So I think the only agreement is that these vaccines will be ready by the fall. The disagreement is whether we're talking the fall of 2020 or the fall of 2021. And I don't see a path by which it happens much before the fall of 2021. And that's going to create, we're going to see that as a source of friction, I would predict as well.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.